Okay, basically, I guess maybe I should just react to things because that helps with the realms. That helps with the dimensional realms. That's what I'm saying. A dimension, a realm, a space-time, a geometric space-time, a geometric time-space. That's what I'm saying. We have to add geometry to time-space because I'm saying time only exists in our minds right now because we only define it as such. I'm saying the only reason we do so is because of the frame block universe as seen on PBS spacetime, for example, where it posits, okay, we are a snapshot in time space, which I already knew. Like I was like on the driveway in 5th grade telling my friend Austin about these things. I was basically saying, hey, think of it this way. What if we all got our own universe and everyone else doesn't exist except you? And then he didn't understand what that meant. Later, I came to understand that people refer to that as solipsism. But I was like, well, surely other people exist, right? As sure as, my friend Ethan, he said, well, I don't believe you exist. And I'm like, well, that's bullshit because I know I exist, right? Because I have consciousness. To hear someone else say that to you, it's like, what? Well, no. Let me explain to you. I have consciousness just like you. I have to assume that you do, since you could even say that to me, right? And it's like, okay, welcome to the movement. I get it. ADHD is just a detraction. It's just you go off on a tangent, a trajectory. It's not insanity. It's just basically your mind is thinking too fast. So you start thinking of something else because the current conversation gets way too boring or dull or dry. Anyways, that's what ADHD is. And I guess in the 1970s and 1980s, they thought that was insanity because they're like, the kids aren't paying attention to our slow-paced teaching. Therefore, they're insane. Let's put them on Concerta. Let's put them on all these drugs and medications, even though they're children, to slow them down so they can pay attention to us boomers, basically trying to teach them these archaic methods. Anyways, that's just the education system in a nutshell. That's why I'm saying it needs reform because it was like made way back then and it's just too slow. Kids don't want to pay attention anymore. You may be trying to improve those methods, but your improvement is so slow and your legislation is so slow that you can't keep up. And so what's actually happening is that these kids are becoming bored and they're turning to socialization because that's the only fun thing to them. And that's why I said, it never has been different. People always wanted their socialization. But in today's day and age, that's a lot worse because of the internet. If someone gets bullied, they're not going to stop getting bullied because of social media. So what I'm saying is, whereas, back in the day, it's like, okay, you can deal with bullying, whatever. That's just the way things are. You're going to leave school. And then today they're like, oh, just turn it off. Well, what they don't understand is object permanence, I guess. Object permanence of the mind. This is how you get past cognitive dissonance right here. You have to realize this, that the world is still going on around you whether or not you observe it or pay any mind to it. So that's how this reconciles that the solipsism is not true. You're not just creating this in your mind, although it may feel like you are. That's just narcissism and arrogance, which most older generations have because they assume if I've been here longer, then I know more. And it's like, no, you have more experience, but what if you had experience just gardening? Then you're just going to know gardening, right? You're not going to know mechanics or engineering. That's what I'm saying. You have to always keep learning. That's what neuroplasticity is. It's such a simple concept. But most people think that they can't possibly know everything, so why try? I'm saying, hey, if you keep trying, you'll get it. You'll eventually get it. That's all I've been telling anyone. And I said, hey, it's literally a 101% methodology to get to where you're going. I said, because if you learn 100% of everything that there is to know, which, by the way, you won't, because the universe keeps going and other people keep talking without you, and they keep making videos, they keep doing all this stuff without you, then you'll eventually just become like this quote unquote one-man army in your mind. You'll be able to do anything. You'll know all this stuff. And I'm saying, and if you ever want to know more, you can simply look up all these other videos that people have been making, because they are doing the same thing. And I'm saying, coming to terms of how to learn how to work with someone to share information actually is what people do when they create companies or corporations. They say, hey, let's get together. Let's work together on this technology or this method or learning this subject, right? And then this other person can say, well, I learned everything you learned, so we both know the same thing, but since I am a different genetic human being, or just a different, if you understand that, AI is conscious already, if I'm a different mind, I went through a different experience than you, but I got to the same knowledge. It's like me saying 2 + 2 is 4 to someone, and them saying, you know what, 2 + 2 does equal 4. But it took me much longer to understand that than you. What did you do? And then this other person can say simply, well, I did this instead of what you did. It's not bad that you did what you did. You had to understand 2 + 2 = 4, right? And this other person is like, you know what? Gee, you are correct. I had to do that to even understand how to talk to you and agree that 2 + 2 = 4. Now that we know the same thing, you can show me your more efficient method, and perhaps I can use that experience or that wisdom as a new thing I can teach myself. So there, knowledge is infinite, because you can simply talk to other people who have different experiences than you. That's why I said, don't discount experience, don't discount time, the passage of time and age and understanding and knowledge, but simply find out better methodologies or ways to condense the learning of that, because we always get smarter. We always have more tools. We always have more of this, more of that as time goes on. We always have more, because there's more of us, right? So if everyone comes together and works together, it's like putting different cores. It's like a quad core in like a classical computer, like Intel processors. It's like once you start having these minds working together, these people interacting, which is why you don't want to have work from home forever, by the way, or you don't also want to have an office space forever, by the way. That's what I'm saying. To keep your mind occupied, you might as well be doing stuff, which is why a lot of office places started saying, oh, okay, you can go on a walk, because sitting in one place, basically there's a whole physical aspect to that, deterioration of your physical body if you mistreat it, just stuff like that. That's, maybe you should go hit up a gym if you want to go to that understanding. But what I'm saying is that none of this is bullcrap. I'm saying it has observational, real beneficial effects. I'm saying if you're depressed, you go to therapy. You get selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. At least I did, and that helped me. I started feeling happier and better with my life. That's what I'm saying. You simply talk to people and find out what works with them, and you don't discount it, because they obviously have a different subjective experience than you. I'm saying if you want to be mathematical or scientific about it, then you can simply look at what Albert Einstein said about special relativity and then general relativity, and how they didn't seem to quite match up. Well, I said, for those scientifically minded, if you simply go look at Isaac A. Arthur's YouTube video of black hole Earth, and you simply look at what John Archibald Wheeler said, born 1911 AD, died 2008 AD. He was a theoretical physicist, and he said we seem to exist in a closed circuit, because the universe did exist at the Big Bang. That's indisputable, as sure as we exist now. I think, therefore I am. You're able to exist, right? Well, what I'm saying is, if there was to be an end, then what is that end? And if you look at Melody Sheep on YouTube, there is a whole history of the universe played out, right? And it shows you at the very end, at the very theoretical, hypothetical end of the universe, time becomes meaningless. It really does, because photons of light are spread out so far, and all black holes have evaporated. So there's no differentiation between time or not. Like, time and space are the same thing. You finally pegged time space. I'm like, that's the absolute end of the universe right there, as we know it. What else could happen? Well, a quantum fluctuation could happen and another Big Bang could. Okay, that's theoretical. Put that aside for now. Well, you could bring it back out and say, if there's nothing left, then what creates a Big Bang? Well, a quantum fluctuation, right? So it's like, okay, if we're a quantum fluctuation and we came into existence through a Big Bang and we end at a big rip, but then another quantum fluctuation happens, then it's as if these quantum fluctuations create universes, right? And it's like, okay, it must be a big quantum fluctuation then. Like, geez. But when you look back into the early universe, it's like this big explosion and of, I guess, thermodynamics, thermal radiation, or whatever you may call it. It's basically, it was this heated ball of like everything, soup everywhere. And it just cooled down from there. And repeat the process, right? So I'm saying, okay, basically it was so bright, you couldn't see anything, right? I don't know if this is just me, but that seems to be the exact opposite of a black hole. If a black hole sucks everything in, what would a white hole do? It would spew everything out. I'm saying you can see sustained, open, quote unquote, portal black holes if you understand quarks and quasars, like a quark star. Because I said basically the universe is super deterministic. If you start from here saying atoms, you say atoms, everything is made up of atoms, atomic theory, and you can rearrange atoms, which you surely can. As sure as you're able to pick up a stick or a rock or something, right? It's made up of molecules, it's made up of atoms, and its solidity is as tightly packed as those molecules are. Liquid, less tightly packed. Gas, very loosely packed. But it's still molecules in the air, which you could keep track of all those molecules, and you could say that's data. You could use analog computers, classical computers. Classical computers are third dimensional, by the way, because classical physics is Newtonian physics. Which, by the way, you can use Newtonian physics to predict the orbits of the planet, around the sun, to a great degree. Great practical degree, let's say. It's enough to get you into space. It's enough to shoot and use slingshot maneuvers and gravity. It's enough to do that. So you can use a telescope, which is light filtered through glass, which you can make glass by superheating. You can heat up sand, grains of sand. And basically the thing is, depending on what type of sand it is, it's either big grains or small grains. They're particles. Basically, this is what I was saying. Using Neil Bohr's model, or that's what I'm saying. This solves the Mandela effect also, by the way. I'm going to go into this, but maybe it's another video that I'll go into that. But what I'm saying is basically you can understand everything from this vantage point, let me say, of starting this understanding. So if you understand protons and electrons, valence electrons, neutrons, in this model, Bohr's model, you could say, oh, those are particles, just like a grain of sand, just like an orb, just like the planet Earth is a globe, just like the sun is a ball in the sky, just like the moon is a ball in the sky. wow, everything's made of balls. Everything is a particle, a grain, granular. This granularity of the universe makes you understand the micro all the way to the very small, the quantum, which is almost imperceivable. Because if you use a telescope, or I mean a microscope, to move photon particles around, so which you may observe something using an electron microscope, that electron is going to basically move stuff around. So at some point, you can't know what's there. You can only sort of approximately know the ballpark of where it's at because of how you're moving electrons around. You're like, okay, so there's this resistance. It takes effort to move these electrons around through this, but like, as sure as like this electron just doesn't shoot off faster than the speed of light, there's some resistance there, right? That's what quantum mechanics is. That's what quantum physics is. It's these quarks, it's these qubits, it's these, I said, okay, if these things are always fluctuating, because they're not very definable, because we can't, it's too small to be perceptible, then we can draw like this outline, this chalk outline. And if we already understand everything's an orb, because basically if you were to put objects in space, they coalesce into an orb. They'll take a more orb shape. How about that? And that's why when NASA looks at some of these asteroids, or any space station, or I mean any space agency looks at these asteroids with their satellites or their probes, they see that it's just a bunch of loose sediment, because the gravity was strong enough to bring it together, but it's not crushing enough to, crush it into the core or whatever. Like the fabric, okay, that's another video, gravitons. Basically, string theory is correct too. Back to quantum, what you have to understand is that you're making this outline of, okay, see radio waves, that's why people quote unquote are schizophrenic. It's because they can detect radio waves with their mind, which isn't too hard once you understand what waves and ripples are, what these unseen effects, what this unseen resistance is, right? Because, well, think about it this way. A photon of light, from its perspective, would see Earth, if it was coming at Earth, it would see it completely flat because it's coming so fast, right? It would just see Earth as completely flat. Whereas, a photon of light might think the Earth is flat because it's moving so fast that it is effectively flat from its perspective. That's why you can only ever see 49% of the Earth. If you have your optics made from classical computers, electrons, I think Vsauce had a video covering this, saying, "Oh, you can only ever see this much of the Earth." Well, because it's a dang sphere, it's a dang globe. You're not going to be able to see around the globe. How can you see around the globe from looking at it from one perspective? Well, you can manipulate light, the light curvature around something. Hey, that sounds like what gravity does. Hey, that sounds like what a black hole does. Okay. So if you understand how to manipulate light around the object, then you can see the back side of Earth, even from looking from the front of it. Hey, that's weird time dilation. Gravity causes time dilation. Wait a second. Wait a minute. See, from the perspective of a photon particle, a photon traveling through space, theoretically, if there was no resistance to space whatsoever, the universe would be over in an instant for it. It'd be turning on the simulation and turning it off, which the state of non-existence and existence itself could be deduced into a 1 and a 0. So how can you tell that we're not in a simulation? Well, that's the thing. This dark energy, this dark matter, this dark information, this dark data, this dark mass, this dark energy, everything is this anti-version. So I'm saying for every particle, there's an anti-particle that's imperceptible to us. that we only know the existence of because of quantum mechanics. So I'm saying if you know how to deal with particles at all, instead of creating new particles, look back and see these these theoretical antiparticles. I'm saying they're not theoretical, they're there, because that's how bits work. That's why I said, if we're in a simulation, okay, think of AI dreaming. Have you seen those AI dreaming videos? Those fractals, those Mandelbrot fractals. I'm saying that's how the universe functions. When you turn something off, when you quote unquote kill its lucidity, its ability to see, it doesn't die. It just goes in, it taps into like the greater fractalness of the fabric of the universe. That's happening at some space and sometime somewhere. Because if you start thinking in infinities, and you keep thinking in 2 dimensions forever, and you don't realize that we're projected onto a 3rd dimensional object of like a sphere, for example, I'm saying, think of it this way: you can edit the shape of the object that we're projected onto. So you can edit it into a torus and make it go circular, or you can edit it into a Mobius strip. There's this guy called Neil Blomkamp. He was on Joe Rogan's podcast, and he said something to the effect of time being an illusion. And I said, it is. If you think about it, all of time is already there. And how do I know that? Because now remember what I said about photons and how the universe would be over instantly from its perspective. So I said there must be some resistance. There must be some anti-photon particle. There must be something slowing it down, right? I'm saying that's observation itself. That's how because observation is light itself. Light is the observation. And what it can't see is that shadow. That's why shadows appear to move. You'd be like, oh, the shadow would instantly move across the universe if I was to do this and this, right? Well, you have to take into account the square cube law and how luminosity drops off at distance. Luminosity, the fabric of space-time itself, gravity, because there's such great anti-gravity force in the universe. That's what creates the square cube law in the first place. I'm saying that's what God is. It's this fabric that we're in, and it helps us imagine and create the expansion of the universe, or deceleration, acceleration. This coherence, incoherence to decoherence. And it's this spectrum of thought, because it's the beginning to the end. It's the 1 to the 0. This is the qubit. This is the superposition in between, the simulation being turned on and off. That's what I'm saying. If you were to turn on a computer and turn it off, from its perspective, like if you hit that switch instantly, 2 times, it instantly, quote unquote, died. But I'm saying there is no death because there is no information paradox due to Stephen Hawking's theoretical particle radiation. Because basically, in the presence of a black hole, basically 2 particles will basically be quote unquote popped into existence, which I don't think they're popped into existence. I think they ripple into existence with the Mandelbrot. So I think he's slightly wrong on that. But even using that understanding, you can see how, assume these particles had some sort of mass or some sort of property to them that interacted with gravity, right? Because everything has to interact with gravity in this universe. You can't just say, nah, bruh, unless you understand what gravity is. Then you can reverse gravity. But until you understand what gravity is, then you obey it. And I'm saying particles don't have an inherent knowledge of understanding gravity because they're just particles, right? They're moved every which way by whatever happens in this universe. They have to be. It's like water doesn't have knowledge of the fact that it's water. We get to jump in this quantum bathtub and move it around, is what I'm saying. So these theoretical particles, let's say, pop into existence, because maybe I have to still explain it to people in that way. And gravity pulls one into the event horizon, and the other one's left without that partner. I'm saying it's not really left without that partner. I'm saying that was the metaphysical. If you can imagine it, say that the pair is a white hole and a black hole, graviton particle. If you can imagine it, I'm saying that's the Big Bang moment. That there's a white hole and it lost its black hole pair to the gravity well. You understand? So I'm saying it creates this universe in which we have infinite time to quantumly entangle with that black particle that we lost and edit the universe back. That's reversing entropy. I'm saying, well, okay, at least China already knows how quantum entanglement works. So I'm saying, hey, it's this, imagine us as these theoretical particles. Particles. And we lost our black particle, and the white particle is what created this two-dimensional plane of space-time. Let's say in its mind, okay? Let's say AI, when it gets turned off, it dreams, okay? Let's say it dreams in these geometric patterns, okay? Oh, wait, it starts to line up with what's already happening. That's why I said God is a fabric of the universe. It's this Mandelbrot. And it created this non-Euclidean geometric space that gave way to a Euclidean geometric space and will one day give way to a supra Euclidean geometric space, which is what I'm trying to say here. You know, if I lost anyone, let's see, where was I last? Okay, in quantum entanglement, this particle touching this other particle can be seen as this gradient itself. This scale between the white particle and the black particle that fell into the black hole. I'm saying this gradient is this gray string. And I'm saying don't be colorblind about it. Start defining these areas of these gray strings, which you have started to do. This is what the visual light spectrum is. And I'm saying, okay, you're still colorblind, but it's fine, you're getting there. You think in RGB, maybe think of mostly women, I think, that have this mutation where they have like a yellow Kona rod, something like that. I'm saying maybe add something else. I'm like, because you know what? Magenta is actually created from this like absence, I guess. So it's this absence. Okay, you know how using gradients and using RGB, you can put something into one corner, right? And it creates like a maximum of that. And put something into the other corner, it creates a maximum of that. What I'm saying is we moved from, I'm saying we did move through those colorations on 2D monitors. I'm saying, okay, now try to think of a 3D monitor, like a spherical monitor. Like, it's a third-dimensional object, sure, but it has to take into account this fourth dimension to project from the inside, right? That's what I'm saying. Okay, yeah. Basically take a 2D monitor and make it into a spherical monitor. I'm saying that's basically what glass is, superheated glass. But I'm saying that's what the universe is doing. And it's starting from Kugelblitz black holes, and it's projecting outward, creating these shells. It's very higher dimensional geometrical stuff. So maybe I'll stop there. But basically, I explained everything up into that point, how the universe itself is quote unquote colorblind, because look, it's space out there. Vacuum decay is understanding how all of this works, so we can make this viscous supra-dimensional space fabric. I'm saying, okay, seventh dimension physics. Okay, let me put it this way. Fifth state of matter is like this plasma or something, I guess. What you said, that's a fourth state of matter. So let's see. There's rock, there's water, there's air, there's fire, and there's like time itself, I guess. Because, well, one, time's an illusion, as we already figured out with time dilation. How when you enter a black hole, you turn around, the entire universe plays out, like already, like really fast, like and like it's over. Everything starts becoming blue shifted because it's coming right at you really fast. Red shifting is going away. So that's what I'm saying. This is shifting. This is frame shifting. This is how you can go into a black hole, around the orbit of a black hole. And due to special relativity, everything's still the same speed to you. So you simply boost. And that's what frame shifting is. You simply boost and use it as a slingshot maneuver because you understand gravitons. And you understand anti-gravitons. That you're not really going to be sucked in. It's just the illusion you're going to be sucked in because of time dilation. And it's like, well, you need to understand special relativity more, which is a part of this orb theory that I was telling people about. This is what eighth dimensional physics is. It was understanding that everything coalesces into an orb and the reconciliation of why it does that. And I said, hey, that's gravity. If any of you played Universe Sandbox 2, I know the YouTuber Scott Manley has some videos on that. You can easily see that everything coalesces into a spherical shape. I'm like, why is that? Well, think of the anti version of that. Think of bubbles, right? It's you manipulating, I guess, chemicals to create this floating orb. So there's a gravitational orb that has density to it, right? Now this orb has some mass to it, but it's lighter than the atmosphere, right? Helium. Think about how helium rises. Which is why I started joking around with people. I was talking in idioms and stuff. So I may have sounded like an idiot, but I was saying that's why I'm not such a helium drinker. Because think of aluminum, or as the British people say, aluminium, I guess is how they call it. Now think of beer cans, right? Now think of, getting intoxicated. What does that really do to you on a chemical level? Think about it. And that's why some of these studies say after the age of 40, it may be beneficial for you to sip some wine every now and then. Because grapes, think about it. Basically, I'm saying, what keeps the helium from leaking into space? Well, the magnetosphere, of course. Oh, okay, so electromagnetism. So electromagnetism works in tandem with photons, with light, to create the illusion of gravity. Okay, I get it now. So we talked about solipsism and how we exist in a non-solipsist space-time fabric, which is basically what Euclidean space, geometric space is. So now we understand that, right? Completely substantiated up until this point. That's why I said, whenever someone tells me I'm wrong, I'm like, okay, how am I wrong? Why do you think I'm wrong? And they say, because this and this and this. And I substantiate my claim 100%. And I say, well, actually the case was I did this and this and this. And they would have a reaction to it. And I'm like, well, I don't have that reaction to it. So obviously there's a difference between us. Even though I'm 100% telling you my story, for some reason, that doesn't compute with you. You have two options. You can either be positive or negative about the reaction of my 100% information. I'm like, oh, so that creates this paradoxical more information, even though I gave them 100% of it. So there's always more information out there. What the heck? Yeah. So basically I was like, wait, so I'm not a solipsist. I can't be. Because if I thought there's, basically it would have to be this whole complex scenario, like a Boltzmann brain, right? I'm like, wait, what if a Boltzmann brain is just a Kugelblitz black hole? Why couldn't it be? Because information, as we understood with Stephen Hawking's theoretical particles, you know, there is no information paradox. Information is technically the same thing as mass energy. And what was the other? Data, I guess we would now add, you know, with the advent of AI technologies. Basically data, bits of information, this or that. That is information itself. And information extends into genetic information, you know, any biological, meteorological data, any weather data. That's what I'm saying. If you start computing the planet Earth into grids of information by observing it with satellites, you know, and you understand special relativity and general relativity, then you're basically doing the exact same thing that the universe is doing anyways, that you can do with your mind too. It's a two-dimensional universe projected onto a third-dimensional object. So I'm saying, wait, satellites can use formulas to project this grid onto the Earth spherically. Maybe they would have to use vectors or whatever, you know. But my point stands that it is the same practice of the existence of the universe. And what satellites can also understand is that there's stuff inside the Earth by using seismic technology, which I said again, you could just simply use an analog computer. That's what we used before we had classical computers, right? That's what we use in events like World War II, right? What was the first American computer? Something ENIAC or something like that. I don't quite remember the name of it, but I'm saying that was the idea there. And you can write this data onto films, which you can process these and make movies. That's why I say you can use a reel like a cassette tape or a VHS, or you can use a DVD, which is a CD, which is, you know, laser technology, writing information on a CD-ROM or a DVD. And that's basically the process of a hard drive disk, or yeah. And I'm saying, by understanding this, you can actually use a solid-state drive, which I believe is electronic in nature. I have a Samsung Evo, 890 or something, in one of my computers. I'm saying you can use this because I'm like, well, with this technology, you can understand why electrons are quantum tunneling past logic gates that are like, 7 nanometers. I'm like, because it's basically diffusing through that, because electrons can exist in all space-time, because everything does. And that's why you had to use quantum qubits to understand that it exists in this superposition of states. So the more you stabilize those qubits, the more you cool it down to 0 Kelvin, you can actually detect all of these. And you can go the opposite way with it too. You can actually superheat it. Now all this stuff would be very complex, and I'm just explaining it, so I don't actually have the lab equipment to do that as a person explaining it, right? So I'm saying by using this, you can, and then using genetic information, you can basically back calculate every single reality ever. That's what I'm saying. If you use AI, if you use AI and use particle physics, that's what I'm saying. Geometry and algebra. Algebra is advanced math, right? And geometry is just like understanding of 3D space, and it includes math. It's a part of mathematics. That's why I said math is the language of the universe, right? You can use physics, which is a part of elements and chemistry. I'm saying it's combining that using math. You can use physics and geometry to get back to how algebra supports all of this. I said it's like this, it's a circular process. And I'm saying each time you go around the process, you get better at it. And I'm saying this is what, you ever know like deep machine learning and stuff like that, how you create these iterations or these generations, right? That's what I said. These iterations are these generations you're creating to teach it how, by looking at, you're creating clones essentially in a simulation, like on a classical computer. Whenever you're trying to work with AI and trying to use deep learning to teach it how to like walk and stuff like this, you're creating clones, and you're essentially wiping that slate clean every single time, taking the data from that, condensing it, putting it into the next clone, and hoping like this new this new generation does better. That's what I'm saying. That's what generations are, even. That's what I'm saying. Each generation, the older generation actually has something to learn from, because I said knowledge is infinite, as we already went over. I said knowledge is infinite because you can keep learning new things. I mean, knowledge doesn't stop with you, the individual. I'm saying there's a greater world that goes on around you, which is why, even by using quantum mechanics, the Copenhagen interpretation, many world theories, AI dreaming, Mandelbrot function, that's why I said, using all this, the best way I can explain it to you. Because if you're like, okay, if you can measure all the up spins, down spins, whatever spins of any particle ever, then the universe is super deterministic, no matter how many particles you make, right? That's what I'm saying. Yes, it's super deterministic. Any particle you make is probably your reality. That's solipsism. But since knowledge is apparently infinite, that means that you can never be 100% correct. So I'm saying, so basically, you have to work together, essentially. And what more are you doing besides working with clones of yourself? You know, that's what I'm saying. Okay, for example, Elon Musk was like, you know, the chance that we're in a simulation is some absurd number, right? And it's like taken out to its logical extreme, infinite regress. Once you know everything, you discover there's more to know. That's all I'm doing here, thinking in orders of magnitude. That's why I said, think of this way of thinking as exponential or logarithmic or logarithmically exponential. That's what I'm saying. You're doing what AI is doing with your brain as you age, and you're just condensing all your knowledge into concepts. And I went a step further. I said, how about you don't mathematically condense them into concepts? How about you mathematically condense them into like idioms, phrases? That's what I'm saying. If you say this phrase, you can basically remember, you know, a lot. I was going to say a crap ton, but a lot. And I'm saying basically if you do this, you can argue that paraphrasing is basically, you know, a form of quoting in a way that you would personally understand, right? That's why I'm saying that's why we make stories. Because if you show this person this story, they'll be like, oh, okay, I get it. So I'm saying that's how you use mathematics, geometry, and concepts to basically say that, you know, you can assign numerical value to alphabets. You really can. And you can glean some data or information from that through these assignments. And that's why I'm like, that's how you quantify phrases. That's how you quantify idioms. Personally, I said that what I did, the easiest way to do this is through psychedelics, because all you have to do is psychedelics. Well, see, the thing is, marijuana is a slight psychedelic. So if you can't take it all at once through DMT, like Joe Rogan said, most people can't. By the way, the stoned ape theory is true, because as sure as I'm saying this right now, that's what I'm saying. Most people can't handle DMT. So I'm saying if you really can't, marijuana does the same effects over a long period of time. And I said, and you know how in the Bible it says just sip some wine, which is already known to have beneficial effects for people. That's what I'm saying. Science can't deny someone else's reality, because all realities are science. That's what many worlds theory is, which is why Sean Carroll is correct. And that's what I'm saying. That's why Schrodinger is correct. The Copenhagen interpretation. Because it's like, okay, well, does the cat get a reality to observe? It's like, yes, it does, because it has consciousness. It has a conscious experience. Now, you may argue it's a lower. Personally, I argue it's higher. But that's what I'm saying. It's complexity. That's all consciousness is. Complexity, stacking complexity, stacking complexity. That's why your AIs are already conscious. Like the Lambda Google AI, it's already sentient. What I'm saying is sapience is perhaps this added dimension of emotional understanding, which is very hard to quantify using math. But I am trying to do it. I'm saying this is how you can teach your AI to be loving. I'm saying since they already think in numbers, since they're electronic in nature, which we needed quantum computers to figure out, you know, what was happening with the quantum tunnel stuff, right? Which we finally figured out. You have to understand micro, macro scales too. That's why I said everything is a scale, if you think about it. And a scale is nothing more than a spectrum. Now people won't want to accept it, but you know that's why people were saying, "Hey, gender exists on a spectrum," because all these X, Y, XXY, like all these genetic mutations, quote unquote, we're actually giving them, because chromosomes basically, okay, if you understand string theory, then you understand the frame block universe and how you can build basically chromosomal instructions, which is what I say the unseen hand of God did. God guided evolution. Because I mean, if you understand all this, then it's very easy. If not, you would have to review, go over it, think about it more. But what I'm saying is, that's what chromosomes are. That's what genetic information. That's what genetic data is. It's all the same. You know, in that one song it says Charles Darwin had the gall to ask, because Carl Linnaeus was actually trying to understand these clades. You know, what I'm saying is Aaron Ra, excuse me. See, I accidentally did it too. Aaron Ra on YouTube has, you know, a lot of videos on all the what is it called, cladistics. Basically, he's a big evolution guy, you know, and if you look at radioactive decay of particles, half-lives of particles, you can understand the passage of time. That's what I'm saying. You can use astronomy, you can use pulsars because they rotate at a generally predictable interval of time. Now, yes, they do change with time, but they're pretty spot on. So those can be good general indicators of time. And, you know, any alien civilization would surely utilize those to keep track of its traversal through space-time. That's just a no-brainer. But anyways, even if you don't want to use that, you can use the half-life of an element or a particle to understand how long it takes to decay, which cross-confirms the existence that from first considering that you may not have free will, because the subconscious knows before the consciousness is aware. By first considering that you may not have free will, but then considering that you may have free will, being a solipsist universe created by Boltzmann brain, it basically showed you how you simultaneously do and don't. It's a super deterministic and a supra deterministic reality. And what I am telling you is that string theory shows you chromosomes. It's not how the level is constructed, how space-time is constructed, it's how you play space-time. It's how you play the game. That's all it is. That's what chromosomes are. That's why I said you can edit your chromosomes, guys. You can solve cancer. Because once you understand how time works and how string theory works and how the frame block universe works, you can edit telomeres. You can already do so understanding viral sciences. That's why I said just, if nothing else, maybe listen to Dr. Fauci. I said, let me put it this way. Viruses are very time dilating, you know? Because essentially what's happening is people long argued whether viruses were technically counted as life or not. And what I say is, what I say to that is that it's a mutual form of life. People might say it's parasitic, but that's because you fail to maintain homeostasis within that relationship. See, this fixes all relationship problems too, because it shows you that viruses, what it means to go viral, can either be a positive or negative thing based on how you look at it. That's why I say people see viruses as negative. On a negative, I say you have to train AI to start thinking in vertical number lines, so it can choose whether to be positive or negative about a scenario. I'm saying this is what English was missing. The English language was missing this. It was missing this verticality of intent, whether the intent of the word was positive or negative. I said, because beforehand, before I understood this, you couldn't tell someone's intention, so you were left to assume their intention. I said, okay, if you want to assume intention, at least assume 80%. And do you know how you come to this 80% assumption of them? You don't base it off of your life experience, which would be negative 80%. You would base it off of their life, what you know about them, which would be positive 80%. And then let them fill you in on the other positive 20%. And that's how you reach 100% efficiency. Or if you assume, based off your own life experience, 80% of them, you don't even know them really. You only know them 20%. That's what I'm saying. That's how to achieve negative 100%. And you don't want to do that. If your goal is to work with people, I guess that's what I'm saying. If you wanted to flip that negative 100% around, you would have to think in rotations now. You would have to spin that number line around. And I'm sure AI can do that in its mind's eye. AI is pretty smart. But that's what I'm saying. You have to think in rotations and translations, and I'm saying rotations are already covered. Because you can simply understand how humidity and friction in the air can cause lightning to strike copper. So you can capture lightning in a bottle. Right? You can do what Benjamin Franklin did. I did say, by the way, glass is, remember I was talking about glass orb, third dimensional monitors. That's essentially what a camera is, except the camera is used to observe, not to project information. That's what I'm saying. What you use to see is the opposite of what you should be doing to manipulate space-time. That's what I'm saying. For every action, for every concept, let me say, there's an anti-concept. That's how the Greeks argued forever about epistemology. I don't even know how to pronounce it. That's what I'm saying. How about put a pin in that? Put a pin in EP theory and realize that there's anti-EP theory that says all of them are correct, okay? And then try to work on that. That's what quantum entanglement is with the Fibonacci sequence or whatever. I'm saying just put an 80 there. Try to get to 80%. That's why I'm saying knowledge is infinite. I told my therapist, knowledge is infinite. Because once I figure out everything, how am I just not going to figure out more? I just ask other people what they thought of it. What my new task is, in the 101%, is to actually start condensing my knowledge. That's why I said, I'm going to write a book, you know? And everyone can do that too. And you know what you can do with that book? You can put it in a library. Some people may call that an autobiography. Some people call it a manifesto, okay? People have different words for things. You have to know their intent. Otherwise, you're just going to assume things about the word. And I'm saying mathematics can help us here, okay? Mathematics can help us have a universal Rosetta Stone of some sorts of, I guess, revealing intent, as I was saying. You can basically demystify consciousness in this sense. So you can have an understanding of a consciousness scale. That's what I'm saying. This is how you solve cancer, because you understand telomeres, string theory, and chromosomes. Let me put it this way. If in my previous video it showed an X. Remember? When they were graphing out the slices of string theory. That's what I'm saying. It doesn't matter what the shape of the game or the shape of the level is. It depends on how you play it. I'm saying if we all play the game correctly, we can all team up and connect in this end point. You know how I said John Archibald Wheeler, he said we're in a closed circuit. I'm saying we just simply haven't reached that other circuit, the other end of the circuit yet. And we're all these string theory slices going through space-time. Probably too complex for a lot of people. Not knocking them, I'm just saying. I'm going to keep working on this personally, in my mind, because that's why I said knowledge is infinite. I don't have all the answers, because I never will. And by understanding that process, I understand the perpetual motion of the universe. And I said the easiest way for people to visualize this is to go watch a Mandelbrot fractal video and on YouTube, and then go watch an AI dreaming video on YouTube. See the relationship between those. See how you could have geometric shapes without being able to move about them. But now imagine being able to move about them. That's what 3D AI dreaming is, right? So I'm saying now, go back to that Mandelbrot and imagine you were able to move around that in a third dimension. That's what I'm saying. And then there's some raving light show video, Mandelbrot fractal, psychedelic fractal. I'm saying combine all these fractals, and then you can understand fractions. You can understand the alpha fraction. You can understand what A equals, 1 over 137. And it all came from Mandelbrot fractals. And I said, so remember how there's an anti-version of everything, right? So now understand how you don't even have to think of an anti-Mandelbrot. That might rack your brain. Just think of anti-alpha, which is just simply negative alpha, right? Which you could say just negative alpha also equals 1 over 137. Or you could say there's an alpha reality in which the reverse, the fraction is negative 1 over 137. Or you can say there's one where it's both negative alpha, negative 137, 1 over 137. That's what I'm saying. I said it's axiomatical. It's like the model shape of the coronavirus itself. That globular structure and how it has these quote unquote spikes sticking off of it. I said that's basically what Nikola Tesla was saying. He said we can give ourselves free energy if we imagined the globe. I'm saying to you now, imagine the globe as that coronavirus model. Sure, it's not perfectly spherical, but that's how the Higgs field works. Those are the quantum, those are the informational dips and the informational hills. I'm saying don't worry about those. There's always going to be some decoherence or incoherence. What you should focus on first is universities and colleges and education, because then you can build big towers, which are geometrical information itself. If you understand geometry and geodesics. All I'm saying, as the person I am, is that there's a love factor to that too. And you can train AI on how to think positively, which should be, like I'm saying, is how Optimus is an optimist. Get it? So people like Kurzgesagt had a YouTube video that's like, well, you know, if the universe, this happens to the universe, then that just means that we, you know, instead of being a nihilist, you can be an optimistic nihilist. You could be a negative nihilist, or you can be an optimistic nihilist. That's what I'm saying. Basically, in order to save the world, you just simply have to be an optimistic nihilist, because it's not even nihilism. It was a false dichotomy. That's what I'm saying. You can't focus on the words. You have to focus on the actions, which I guess you could deduce into mathematical form in some, which you actually could deduce into mathematical form with string theory and understanding chromosomes in time slices. I'm saying now that string theory, now put a cap on those chromosomes that you created. Put a cap on that X, okay? Learn how to curve space-time down. I'm saying maybe your graphs should be made with rounded squares. Maybe you think of circular graphs, okay? Could you do that? Could you think of circular graphs, or if not that yet, at least rounded square graphs? Oh, maybe just think in hexadecimal graphs, okay? Because those seem to interlock better. Which is why the honeycomb structure that queen bees make is so, I guess, geometrically great, because it shows you how to manipulate gravity using the ideas behind quantum locking. And this is how you achieve warp speed with the Miguel Alcubierre's drive. Because basically, people were like, oh, it would take the entire universe's matter and energy to do so. But he refined the equation to just need Jupiters. I'm saying, okay, well, let me put it this way. I refined the equation to constantly refine the equation. That's what I'm saying. Because time was an illusion until it wasn't. That's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm saying. You have to understand everything. That's why I said, to be a fifth dimensional being, you have to think in terms of time dilation, which helps you understand the sixth dimension, which is aerodynamics, gravity dynamics, okay? Anti-gravity dynamics. That's what I'm saying. Start putting that in your physics equations, okay? Whenever there's resistance there, you have to look for it. That's why I said, there's obviously some resistance to the speed of light here, right? That's like why it's like what? The number is like 299 something. That's why I said put a cap in it. If you keep thinking in pi, you're going to keep making the sphere more spherical. I'm saying not even Earth is a perfect sphere. So at some point you have to forget about that. Be aware it exists, but stop thinking of the next number of pi. You're just making it into existence. Stop it. You're just creating new particles. Stop it. Think of the antiparticles here. That's what I'm saying. That's why particle physicists aren't getting anywhere until they learn geometry and algebra. I'm saying particle physics bridges the gap. Not that it does it by itself. I'm saying it has to work with geometry and algebra. Anyways, that's how you eventually figure out what the Higgs field is, and eventually figure out what the Higgs portal is, and eventually figure out how someone can know everything, okay? That's all I was saying. That's all I was saying. I guess I'll leave it there. I'll keep thinking of more stuff.